Hi, friends. Thank you for tuning in to the Concussion Coach podcast. I'm Bethany Lewis, the Concussion Coach. I'm a neurological occupational therapist and certified life coach, and I specialize in guiding people through their concussion recovery journey. I am passionate about helping people understand their injury, speed up their recovery, and reclaim control over their life post-concussion. The purpose of this podcast is to help increase awareness of concussions and the impact they can have on a person's life, and to bring hope to people who have suffered a concussion and those who love them. I firmly believe that sharing stories and knowledge about concussions will bring important light and understanding to this misunderstood and often invisible injury. The information in this podcast is meant to bring that awareness and hope and is not meant as medical advice. The opinions shared are those of the interviewees and my own. If you are suffering with lingering concussion symptoms, I have created a concussion coaching program specifically for you. I will be your mentor to guide you through your recovery journey, offering help with understanding and managing your symptoms, setting achievable goals, and learning how to manage your own thoughts and nervous system in order to get control over your life again. If this program sounds like something that would help you or someone you love, sign up for a free consultation. In the consultation, you'll get valuable information and resources and gain hope for your future. Sign up for your free consultation at the link in the show notes or at my website, www.theconcussioncoach.com. Hi, friends. Welcome back to the Concussion Coach podcast. My guest today is Dr. Bryce Crowley. Dr. Crowley and I were introduced by our mutual friend, Sherrick Peck, who joined me on the podcast back on episode 47. So you should go listen to that if you haven't yet. I have gotten to meet Dr. Crowley in person and see him in action with his patients. He has a wealth of knowledge and experience, and I'm excited to hear his story and have him share with us his expertise. Dr. Crowley is a multiple concussion survivor. He has been married for 29 years and is a father to two amazing daughters. He likes fast skis, fast bicycles, and really fast cars. He has been a professional ski instructor since 1993. He is also a nationally certified high-performance driver education instructor for the Porsche Club of America since 2022. He's been a chiropractor since 2001, licensed massage therapist since 1995, and loves working with those battling to recover their head and spine and brains after accidents and injuries. In 2018, his practice shifted to add functional neurology to better support his brain recovery after suffering another mountain bike crash. He is known for answers for those who feel medicine and chiropractic have failed them. He is known for results in difficult or chronic cases and thorough explanations. Thank you for being here today, Dr. Crowley. I'm really excited for this conversation.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to geek out with you about good brains for about the next hour or so.
Yes, perfect. I love geeking out. Okay, so let's start with you telling us a little bit more about yourself. Where are you from and what do you love?
Well, my practice is in Farmington, Utah. That's about 20 minutes north of downtown Salt Lake City. Moved here as a fifth grader to the Farmington area. Thankfully, they let me back into Farmington in 2012 to move my practice to the city. We love it here. And it's a lot of fun seeing people from all over the place. I've seen people come from as far away as Bolivia, Canada, Italy, Switzerland, 15 other states across the U.S. Almost all of those have loudmouth relatives or friends and family worried about them and beg them to come to Farmington, Utah for a second opinion or more thorough help.
That's awesome. I love it. There's very international clientele here. That's great. So What got you interested in I should have paused this. So is the word chiropractic, like what got you interested in chiropractic or chiropractic? Like, how do you say that? I've always wondered.
Well, chiropractic, it means the practice with your hands. That's the Latin translation. That's a really good question. I'm the youngest of four. My oldest sister went through massage therapy school at Boise State University. When I was 18 years old, she worked on me. And I quickly realized that I've got hands that can feel where people are hurting or holding tension in ways that is, I guess, is unteachable. So I've always wanted to work with my hands. I never wanted to have a really boring job of sitting in an office, running a pencil and a computer all the time. Mm-hmm. So I'm hands-on. We had two family friends that were well-respected chiropractors up in the Boise, Idaho area. They helped a lot of people. I had no idea what it meant to be a chiropractor, but I knew that I wanted to help people and knew that I wanted to work with my hands.
Awesome. Well, it sounds like that's a gift to be able to feel that in people and know what they need. Yeah. That's pretty cool. Yeah. And so I knew that you had a concussion. I didn't know that you had multiple concussions, but then reading your bio, hearing the things that you like, fast things, it's not surprising to me that you've had multiple concussions. So tell us a little bit about your history here with your injuries and kind of how long ago, what happened with them.
Great question. It took 9 different doctors to try and put the puzzle pieces together for me. I was in the very beginning of chiropractic college, and I became a terrible responder to traditional chiropractic care. The more they did for me, the worse I got, which was really interesting. I was ready to drop out of chiropractic college because everybody said my right side SI joint or right side lower back was twisted backwards on the right side. And the typical approach is lay on your side and try and adjust that or pop that loose to untwist my pelvis. And the more they would try and release or adjust or move my pelvis, the tighter it would get. And then the 9th doctor looked at me and said, I wonder if that is a tight protective joint rather than a twisted injured joint. I'd had many crash landings, many injuries, sports injuries, all sorts of things. I was 26 years old, and one of the diagnoses was I had a birth defect in my lower back. And so I became a chronic or a difficult case to adjust. I'm a big, tough guy. The more aggressive they were, the quicker my muscles were to respond and resist and fight. The more they did, the tighter I got. Doctor number 9 looked at me and said, I want to do an old test from the early 1900s. Lay flat on your back, and I'm going to measure if your legs are the same length. It's called a leg check. But it's pretty rare that they do that leg check when they have the patient lie flat on their back, not lie flat on their stomach on a traditional chiropractic table. So I'm laying flat on my back, and she looks at me and she says, did you know that one leg is a ½ inch shorter than the other? And I said, no. And she said, did you ever break your leg? And I said, yes. And she said, what did you do? Well, I borrowed my big brother's ski boots when I was 8 years old. I adjusted the ski bindings all by myself as an independent 8-year-old. I crashed and my leg twisted and I broke both bones in my right leg. And the doctor said to me, wait a minute, you've got a left short leg by ½ an inch. You must be mistaken. You must have broken your left leg, not your right. And I said, no, you're mistaken. I'm crystal clear. I know about the cast I wore forever on my right leg. She said, no, it was your left. And I said, no, it was my right. And she scratched her head and said, this is really weird. Your left leg is shorter than your right. And she said, okay, lift your head off the table, turn and look over your right shoulder and lie your head down on your right ear. And when I did, my legs shifted to perfectly even and balanced. And she gave me the exact same facial expression you gave me and said, wait a minute, your left leg just grew a ½ an inch when you looked over your right shoulder. Now, this is called a chiropractic test for something called the cervical syndrome. Turning the neck one way or the other should not trigger the low back and pelvis muscles to resist or protect or pull one leg shorter than the other. It's called a short leg check or a short leg test. I looked right, my leg got longer. She had me look left. My left leg pulled 1 inch shorter than the right. And she went, whoa, that's a world record for me. Look right, my legs went even. Look left, my left leg pulled 1 inch short. And she said, we need to do testing on your neck. And I said, but I'm here for my lower back. And she said, I need to do testing on your neck. So she took what back then, this is 1998, a million years ago. She took high definition x-rays of my neck. And she said, I'll see you in 3 days. And I said, aren't you going to help my low back? And she said, no, because that doesn't work for you. I came back 3 days later. She looked at me and said, when did you break your neck? And I said, I don't have a broken neck. And she said, yes, you do. You have a broken neck. You're lucky you're not paralyzed. You're lucky you didn't die instantly with the head and neck injury that you have. When did you break your neck? And I said, did the chiropractor break my neck? And she smiled and said, no, chiropractors don't break bones. She said, you've broken your neck in a car accident. And I said, no, I haven't. And she said, yes, you have. And she said, how many car accidents? And I refused to answer. and I said, you must have made a mistake. And she said, no, I've talked to 2 radiologists. You're lucky you're not paralyzed, or you're lucky you didn't die instantly with a head and neck injury.
What?
When did you break your neck? And I said, I don't know what you're talking about, but I did not break my neck in a car. And so here's a little asterisk in my health history. If you're sliding a car around in a snowy parking lot in high school and you take the tail light out of your friend's car, it probably won't break your neck. So bumper cars, fender benders, I have seen in practice can cause head and neck whiplash injuries or concussions. Mm-hmm. But I told her I did not break my neck in a car. And she scratched her head and said, okay, when have you been knocked unconscious or when have you been knocked silly? And I said, which time do you want me to start with? And she was baffled, saying, what do you mean? And I said, where do we start? So she helped me put the puzzle pieces together by saying, in the last 5 years or more recent than that, when did you get concussed or knocked out or knocked silly? And a light bulb went off, and I said to her, does breaking a mountain bike helmet and not being able to turn my neck side to side for 2 weeks cause this? And she said, you broke a helmet on your mountain bike? And I said, yes. And she said, you're lucky you're not dead.
My gosh.
Okay. So I was 26, almost 27 when I was having this conversation with her, having to explain. So this was 1998, almost 1999. And in 1993, I was riding a brand new bicycle with fancy pedals where your shoes clip into the pedals. Thankfully, I had a top of the line bike helmet. I crashed. When I crashed, I looked towards my left shoulder and I landed on the right side of my head and I jammed my neck towards my left shoulder. Mm. I compressed the third bone in my neck. And I'm very, very fortunate that knocking the top corner off of the body of the vertebrae, that the bone fragment went forward rather than into my spinal cord. Otherwise, I could have been like Christopher Reeve's Superman, who was on a ventilator breathing tube for 9.5 years and fully paralyzed below the 9th cranial nerve in his brainstem. He was on the breathing machine for 9.5 years, paralyzed. Wow. Do you know who Christopher Reeves is and how he fell off his horse? And he shattered the second bone in his neck. I compressed the third bone in my neck. I'm missing 25% of the front left corner of C3 in my neck.
Wow.
So I looked at this ninth doctor that I was with and being interviewed by was a student with only 8 weeks left in her education.
Wow.
She was an expert in the upper neck, or what's called the upper cervical area, the upper cervical chiropractic procedure. And she looked at me and said, you're lucky you're not dead. And I said to her, I don't get it. And she said, let me gently rebalance your head on top of your neck. And I said, wait a minute, you said I have a fractured neck. Do I need surgery? And she said, no, you don't. And I said, I don't know what you're talking about. She said, don't worry about it. Just trust me. And I was scared to death. Mm. Did I scare you to death yet with my crazy history?
Yeah, I'm scared. Keep going. I'm on the edge of my seat here.
Okay. Well, I will simplify. She did a whole bunch of geometry and mathematical calculations, and I don't enjoy math any way or shape or form, but it completely changed my chiropractic education so that I studied general chiropractic and I studied upper cervical chiropractic at the exact same time, trying to understand how it was that she helped me. So she helped me tremendously. My head was leaning to the left by 1/4 of an inch, missing that portion of the bone. The top 2 bones in my neck had both twisted forward. Even though I looked left when I crashed, my neck shifted forward underneath that. So my head was twisted one direction, my neck was twisted the opposite. In the upper neck, our brainstem does not tolerate that very well. When I would stand up, my head leaning left by 1/4 of an inch, gravity was pulling me left of center. And so my brain was telling my right side lower back muscles to pull me towards center, to put my ears on top of my feet. And after several years of that, 4.5 years, the right side of my low back was begging for mercy.
Wow.
So despite
so interconnected. That's so crazy.
And you're mother of just a few little tiny people called your children. You've seen them learn how to walk. You've seen them run into things, but they have to learn how to crawl before they can learn how to stand up against gravity. My head was leaning left. My low back was pulling my head on center to the right, and it was severely tight. And the more they tried to force my low back, the more my low back would win the tug of war.
Yeah.
When she very, very gently, without any pressure at all, she was more gentle underneath my left ear than putting sunscreen on one of your babies. She very gently shifted my head upward 1/4 of an inch and took the first 2 bones from the front and very gently untwisted those underneath my ear, and my lower back released almost instantly. She never had to touch my low back. If I have a tight right side lower back, my head has shifted towards the left again. If my head is not on straight, my low back locks up immediately.
And you know it, like you've had this experience. you can tell when that's happening.
If I fall asleep in an airplane, my head will go left. Some people fall forward, some people fall back. My head falls left. That's a long answer, but there is significant soft tissue damage, ligament instability, and I'm missing 25% of one bone. So if I'm tired, my head goes left. If my head is left, my right side low back has to work overtime. And it's really picky about not wanting to work that hard.
As it should be. Can you adjust yourself or do?
Nope, I cannot.
Okay.
I can. I'm very high maintenance. So I rely on a very gifted chiropractor to very gently put my head back on straight.
Literally. Wow. Did you have concussion symptoms from that you didn't realize were happening?
Well, according to me, I did not. According to my health history, I had significant signs of traumatic brain injury.
Okay.
So
keep going with your story here. How did things keep playing out?
Well, there were concussions prior to that. There was a severe whiplash prior to the crash in the mountain bike. There were sports injuries, football injuries, skiing injuries, water skiing injuries, including sledding headfirst into a tree. So head injuries, neck injuries started as a little tiny, unsupervised, wild adrenaline maniac. And I've crash landed many times. And there must be a good reason that I'm still here with all the dumb things I've ever done. Or
there must be.
Or repeat offending the exact same things on my mountain bike. I've had another severe concussion on a mountain bike as recent as 2017 on top of that cervical spine fracture. So symptoms for me as a young college student, I went from listen to a lecture, never have to write a note down, never have to study and take a test and get straight A's. I sailed all the way through all of my junior high and high school with almost perfect grades and never studied ever. I never had to. And
one of those annoying people.
Not anymore. So the switch flipped where I could sit and try and read and then reread and reread and reread and realize my brain was a million miles away. My eyes were looking at words on the page, but my brain was somewhere else. And I did not comprehend, did not remember. And so I dropped out of college. And then I went back to college. And then I dropped out. And then I went back to college. And so by the grit of my teeth and a wonderful life, I scraped my way into chiropractic college with no ability to remember anything at all.
Oh my gosh.
Anyways, I'm 9 months into chiropractic college, diagnosed with, lucky I didn't kill myself breaking my neck. And I started to be able to remember. The other significant thing was when I would lay down to sleep, there was severe pressure on my neck or the spinal fluid. So I would take 20-minute cat naps, and then I would wake up and turn over and wake up and turn over, and probably some sleep apnea breathing problems with the pressure in my neck. And so sleep exhaustion or sleep fatigue was brutal. If I were seated upright in a movie or a college lecture, I would fall asleep almost instantly because I was exhausted. If I would lay down on a pillow, there was so much pressure in my neck, my brain was screaming, and I would startle awake about every 20 minutes.
And you weren't in pain, like you didn't know why you were waking up?
I would toss and turn. I would roll over and look at the clock, very upset and angry that I'd only slept 20 minutes. I took 20-minute cat naps for 4.5 years.
Oh my gosh.
And so with an untwisted neck and better circulation in and out of my upper neck called spinal fluid or a happier spinal cord or a happier brainstem, I started to sleep a little better. I'm still not a good sleeper, but I sleep a little better. I have several tricks to try and sleep a little better. However, sleep and exhaustion, and I'm sure you've seen so many people have so much stress in their nervous system or anxiety or pain that they're irritable or restless or exhausted or prone to adrenal fatigue or depletion, low batteries, whatever you call it. There's a million ways to try and describe that.
Yep.
So the good news and the bad news is I understand the exhaustion part or the anxious part or the irritable part in a big way. So short-term memory, long-term memory, the ability to focus or quality sleep were significant and still are pretty significant for me. Soft tissue instability in my neck, ligaments, tendons, the muscles, the soft tissues to move or try and support and stabilize, those have been through the ringer multiple times for me, not just once with the fracture.
So you said that your memory, you were able to remember things a little bit better and sleep a little bit better after the adjustment. That because the sleep was improving, so those other cognitive functions were improving as well?
And for sure, the circulation through the spinal fluid.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Having somebody work with what's called cranial sacral therapy to make sure the circulation of the cerebral spinal fluid is not under pressure or stress is one of those key components that helps me. If I go 3 nights in a row where my brain will not shut down, will not sleep, then I'll go see a cranial sacral therapist if I've recently seen my chiropractor to make sure my neck is not out of alignment or that circulation in general is not under pressure or stress with that spinal fluid.
Wow. Okay, so you have a lot of personal experience with this.
Yeah.
The things that you work with your patients on. Is there more to the story? Like you got that adjustment, you started doing better, you went and you were still in school. What?
Yeah. Well, so I'll back up a little bit. Prior to the mountain bike crash or fracture, I was knocked out cold playing football at age 16, sophomore football, right up the road at good old Davis High School. I was knocked out cold playing football. Age 12, I crashed really hard on a water ski, trying to jump from one side of the wake all the way across to the other. And I went head over heels in and out of the water about 6 times. And that severely whiplashed my neck. So I wore a neck collar for 14 days. And so when I'm 26, almost 27, and she's telling me I have broken my neck, I said to her, wait a minute, have I had a fracture all the way back till age 12, almost 15 years? And she said, no, you don't, because there's no sign of any scar tissue in your neck. And I said, what do you mean? And she said, if you've torn the ligaments between the bones in a whiplash, those bones or ligaments will start to calcify. It's called fusion or spinal degeneration. The ligaments begin to be replaced by calcium, trying to build a bridge to protect the discs from collapsing or instability of the bone shifting in and out of alignment. I had no collapse of the discs. I had no sign of calcification of the ligaments, so there was no degeneration. And so she said to me, you'll learn later in your radiology classes about scar tissue on the spine as an indicator of how old the injuries are. And she said, your injury's 5 years old or less. There's no way you've had a fracture since you were 12 years old, almost 15 years, in the past. But I was prone to a very simple mountain bike crash because of the soft tissue instability in my neck, muscle whiplash, tendon instability, ligament instability. It made me very susceptible to another head injury. So in my practice, I'm a big proponent of have lots of fun and do not neglect a checkup after an interesting landing or a startle to shock or jolt or trigger muscles to be stiff and sore for a few days to make sure they don't further injury or instability or begin or accelerate the degeneration process for scar tissue around the spine.
Okay, so this might lead us on a little bit of a tangent here, but when you're saying this, it reminds me, I've just been talking to my cousin whose son has had a recent concussion. So what do you tell moms who are worried and want to protect their crazy boys from hurting themselves all the time? Does that, you say, get a checkup, and then what kind of things would you recommend that they do at that point?
Great question. Well, it's not just crazy boys, because I'm proud father of 2 amazing daughters, and one of those is now proud mother of an amazing 2-year-old grandbaby. They're all girls. So I'm very skilled in helping girls that have fallen off the monkey bars or trampolines or cartwheels, or in my household, we love to ski when it's cold and snowy. And so I've had experience teaching my daughters to learn how to ski as young as age 2, and having a little tiny skier get run over by a big giant skier enough to knock a helmet off of a 3-year-old head.
Oh.
So cracked helmets in ski accidents can whiplash little girls easier than little boys because of muscle tone or muscle density. Anyways, stitches, broken noses, skier concussions, or trampolines and monkey bars for girls can be just as significant as sports for boys.
Yeah. Well, and gymnastics and soccer, like it's all, there's all kinds of
absolutely.
things. Yeah.
Well, learning how to do a hand spring can turn into doing a head and neck spring. And I've seen that a lot in cartwheels in little girls. So here's what I tell parents. Little children don't have fully developed nerves until about the age of 18. They don't have as many pain receptors as adults do. And so pain is never the best indicator of whether our child is okay after a crash landing or not. But mothers know their babies better than anybody else. So mothers can tell if they are irritable in a different way, or if they are moody, or their behavior is not their typical. If their sleep pattern is reversed or inverted, way more sleep than their typical can be an indicator. It's not just growing pains to make them sleep more. Worse would be that they don't sleep anymore, or they have an upside down inverted where they sleep all day and then they party all night long. Or behavior in classroom, behavior with friends, not getting along with each other. Our nerves can scream and become very irritable, or they don't handle stress like they normally would. And that's an indicator of stress, or usually injury or pressure on the nerves. And so the big giveaway I tell parents that trust me, if their little kiddo cannot look as far over one shoulder as they can the other, if they're tighter or restricted on one side than the other, that's almost always a dead giveaway that they've landed on the head or the neck, or they've whiplashed those soft tissues. The other would be if their head leans closer to one shoulder than the other, or they have one shoulder lower than the other. Those are almost giveaways that they have crash landed hard enough to injure the soft tissues. Now, asking a mom to look at her kids and get them to hold still is always really easy. And so I offer them a complimentary consult for me to check their posture, or their range of motion, or their nerve sensitivity to stress. So I test range of motion, I test posture, and then I do some applied kinesiology, or what's called clinical kinesiology, or muscle testing, as an advanced way for me to see, without causing stress for big or little people, are they okay, or are they showing signs of stress or pressure on the posture or the nerves?
And that's awesome. And what do you do? Like, what do you tell people to do if there is imbalance there? Problems?
Well, great question. Hopefully that's a face-to-face conversation where I then test or confirm that I can help change that posture, or change that range of motion, or calm down the nervous system, or support the nervous system. For people around the world, that's a harder question to answer. My protocols and procedures are very unique. I've modified those through the years heavily, but there are some good resources for people that cannot get themselves all the way to good old Farmington, Utah.
Okay, and what are those? What resources would you recommend?
Great question. If the head is leaning to the side, or the range of motion is restricted or tighter on one side than the other, seeking out what's considered an upper cervical chiropractor is a very good resource for some of these people, but not for everybody. Okay. There's a couple of websites that are very good directories of different practices that are highly focused or almost specialized in head and neck balance, head and neck range of motion, or head and neck stability. But in general, searching for upper cervical chiropractic is a good start for many people.
Okay.
Now, you know better than most, there is advanced nerve and brain testing like a functional MRI for very complex cases. And I was one of those very complex cases where it was more than just release or realign or adjust the neck for me. Mm-hmm. Cleaning out my brain, getting the blood vessels and the blood flow into the right places in my brain was a huge puzzle piece to get my brain to calm down or to get my brain to remember. The occupational therapy was very helpful for me. The neuromuscular therapy was very helpful for me. But since all of those procedures for me, I've gone even more specific with some functional neurology to really try and isolate which part of the brain is struggling for inflammation or blood flow.
Excellent. Okay. So yeah, tell us a little bit more about when, like, I know you ended up going to CFX, Cognitive FX.
Yes.
Tell us about when and how that happened and
Okay. Well, fast bicycles, fast skis, fast cars. In Labor Day of 2017, I had a mountain bike crash again. Mm-hmm. And I landed on the right shoulder, right side of the rib cage, pushing my neck left of center again. Mm. And I didn't know for several months, but I had herniated the fourth disc in my neck. And I had really shut down the vision part of my brain and the short-term memory part of my brain. And in addition, and I smile when I say a few ribs on the right side of my body were very upset about landing hard on my right shoulder. Oh. So in January of 2018, I was sitting in a license renewal seminar for my chiropractic license. The discussion was around car accident and whiplash injuries, and we had a lecturer that was a guest that day, Dr. Alina Fong from CFX. And after her lecture, I walked up and said, "I need your help." And she said, "What case or what customer, what client do you want help with?" And I said, "Me." And she said, "What do you mean?" And I said, "I need your help. I'm losing my short-term memory." And she said, "How soon can you come to Provo for an MRI?" And I made arrangements, and she snuck me in the schedule, and she said, "Okay, my testing is really advanced. We hope you do well." Her testing was so advanced, I fell asleep during the MRI. She worked over my brain, and I could remember two faces or two names or two items, and then I would fall asleep. Mm. And so she said, "I think I can help get your brain to reactivate or recover or reboot." And so 6 weeks later, I spent a week in Provo, and I went from really non-functional to actually setting a record by the end of the week. Nice. And I modified her protocol a little bit. And so I've studied brain food, brain injuries. And so I cheated for calories or nutrition while I did the therapies there and had a pretty good experience. Mm. And then a year later, found out I still had portions of my brain that were still shut down.
How did you find that out?
I was in a advanced or difficult chiropractic case seminar sponsored by a laser company named Urconia Lasers. They brought an expert to Salt Lake City. They asked for a guinea pig or victim to sit in the front of the room. They did a neurological exam for all the cranial nerves, and I failed every cranial nerve test that he put my brain through.
Oh my goodness.
And I felt like I was doing really well. So he did a non-thermal or a low-level laser treatment to my brain while he had me activate the different cranial nerves, and he rebooted or restarted my brain. And then I sat there for 2 hours, lightheaded in La La Land, wanting to take a nap. I went home, slept for 3 hours, and I woke up and felt like $1 million for the next week.
Wow.
So that changed my practice again, introducing low-level lasers and an advanced neurological exam for the cranial nerves of very simple things like having somebody shrug their shoulder or stick their tongue out or stick their pouty lip out or go cross-eyed or look out the corner of their eyes or feeling on the face and seeing, did that startle the nervous system? Did it shut down the brain? Mm-hmm. And so now I screen people that are stressed and not handling stress, or they cannot hold a chiropractic adjustment. Their body is not sleeping. They're not digesting well. They're not remembering well. They're very irritable. They're very stressed, or they don't handle stress well. And I do a neurological exam on the brain or the brainstem and the cranial nerves. And then I will laser their head and their neck and reactivate those nerves.
So cool. Well, okay. I want to hear about a little bit more about your CFX experience, and then I want to hear more about the laser stuff too, because I'm fascinated by that. What changes did you see, or what benefits did you see from going to Cognitive FX?
Great question. The exit exam showed at the end of the week, I still had a slow left eye to bring my left eye in towards my nose. And so I went home with vision therapy and the string therapy, or the colored beads on the string.
Mm-hmm.
I'm assuming you know that quite well.
I do. It's everyone's favorite.
I had a very slow left eye, and in doing that test through that week, I was not seeing with my left eye, and so covering my right eye and really trying to re-engage my left eye was a life changer for what I thought were lightheaded spells or vertigo, afraid of heights kind of spells. I love to ski, but if the ski lift stops in a hurry and then starts to swing back and forth in the wind, I panic like I'm going to fall right out of my chair. And that's part of left eye. My vision, or double vision, or a slower left eye than right eye, is double vision for me, not vertigo, not neck instability despite a fracture, but it's double vision.
Yep.
My short-term memory was miraculously changed by the occupational therapy, and the brain games, the mind games, the hand-eye coordination was huge for me with that week. That was a life changer.
Awesome. Yeah, that multisensory stuff to work towards resetting things so that it all functions better is really important.
Absolutely. The other part, the deep tissue neuromuscular therapy, repeatedly, day after day, all week long, really changed how protective or how stressed or guarded my neck was. And so keeping that from going back to that kind of protective tension, and now I can use a simple device called the Rezzimax to work on those soft tissues, or lasers to bring blood flow through those tissues. Avoiding that kind of tension using the Rezzimax has been fantastic for my neck. I use it also on brains and use it on stress and digestion for other cases that are different than mine.
Awesome. Yes. Okay. Before we get into the lasers then, okay, thank you for the CFX summary, and let's talk quickly about the Rezzimax, because I love that you love it. I am definitely a huge fan now. When I did my interview with Sherrick back on, I guess it was episode 47, I knew that they used the Rezzimax occasionally at Cognitive FX, so I was a little bit familiar with it, but had never used it on myself. And then I had a friend who had a concussion who had met Sherrick and said that it made a really big difference for him. And so, but when I talked to Sherrick, I had never actually tried it or played with it at all.
Oh, wow.
And so we did our interview, and I was like, okay, I really want to learn about this. And so I've since then gotten quite a few Rezzimaxes, and I'm a huge fan. I use it for people a lot and recommend it a lot because I do feel like it makes a huge difference. So I'm curious to hear what you how you got introduced to it and what you have found it to be helpful for in your clients.
Well, most people would call it an accident. I call it another puzzle piece for me to be able to help me, myself, plenty of other people. So being introduced to applied kinesiology or clinical kinesiology or muscle testing for difficult chiropractic cases or advanced chiropractic cases, I was introduced to laser therapy to try and calm the nervous system or reboot the nervous system. In seeing online success story videos or training videos from my favorite neurologists using laser on the brain, like a stroke causing damage in the brain, a surgery removing tissue from the brain, some sort of brain injury, I would then see this device strapped to an arm or a hand or a leg in these videos with no explanation at all. And I found out eventually these were Rezzimax nerve tuners on a leg or an arm, like somebody that had had a stroke while they were lasering the brain, trying to improve blood flow or create new nerve connections in the brain. And the part of those neurologists that fascinated me the most were the concussion folks and the sports injuries that they were helping. Not the folks that have had a stroke, not the folks that have had a brain tumor or a brain surgery. Those folks scare me to death. And so I focus on the athletes that want a better brain or get the circulation, blood flow, or inflammation off of the brain, out of the head, out of the neck. Anyways, I would see videos for lasers and trying to learn laser protocols. And finally, I found out about this device called a Rezzimax. And this was several years ago when there was no online training information or instruction manual or recipes at all. It was a device that I knew was being used, and I had no idea how to use it. I almost purchased one on a Black Friday sale, but I decided not to because I wanted instructions instead of another device that gathers dust in the side of the room.
Yep.
I'm sure you have none of those, or you've never seen any of those with your clients ever,
no,
right?
Never.
And a couple of months later, I received an email that said, we're doing our first international conference, including a device, including certification. Come to Salt Lake City for a 2-day seminar. And I did. And I met neurologists using laser protocols, but I learned Rezzimax protocols for advanced cases or nerve cases, nerve injury cases, or pain management cases. And I don't necessarily take care of lots of pain management or neuropathy people. I like to take care of nerve inflammation, nerve repair, nerve connections, and the chiropractic cases. So that's a little bit of my Rezzimax background.
That's awesome. And you have found it to be helpful for people and yourself, it sounds like.
Currently in my practice, I will use it for inflammation, edema, congestion in the tissues, like a sprained ankle to clean out a sprained ankle. I use it heavily for breathing tension, breathing stress, diaphragm spasm, digestion shutdown, digestion stress. When people are in stress mode, they don't breathe well, they don't eat well, they don't digest well, they don't sleep well. Mm-hmm. Or in my case specifically, I work on my neck for neck tension, trying to protect my neck. Occasionally, I'll have people put it on their jaw for severe jaw injuries, jaw tension, tension in the face, or tension or stress with the brain on the skull or in the back of the neck. Mm. So in my focus, it's really related to the adrenal fatigue or the adrenal distress when the nervous system is screaming for help, screaming for support, trying to get them back into that rest and repair or rest and digest system instead of the adrenal survival mode.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. Thank you for sharing all of that. Okay, let's jump into the laser stuff because I listened to the book by Norman Doidge called The Brain's Way of Healing, and he talks about low-level laser light therapy. And Ever since then, it was amazing to me to hear the impact that it could have. And so I'm fascinated by it. I haven't learned a whole lot myself yet. So I love talking to people who do know about this stuff. So tell me, what you've seen with it and why you like to use it for your clients.
Excellent. Well, let me start first with there's a really big difference between what's commonly called red light therapy or LED red lights versus low-level laser. And there's even a greater distinction with what's called a class 2 non-thermal, meaning there is no heat at all, with a class 2 low-level laser. There are class 4 lasers that a dermatologist can use to take freckles or scars off of our skin. There's laser skin resurfacing for wrinkles or scar or dermatology problems. There's laser for radiology to try and rupture or kill an abnormal tissue or an abnormal cell. That's not what I'm talking about with lasers. And that's really important when it comes to the brain. Using laser on the brain is really, really picky, and the brain is very sensitive. The brain does not tolerate heat or an increase of heat very well. And so I've learned the hard way since 2018 in using lasers. There's only one laser company that I've found that does not produce any heat at all in the tissues. And I learned the hard way on a concussion case with another laser, a class 3 laser that does produce heat, but it's a laser that's only approved to produce heat, like putting a heat lamp on the body. It's almost like using hot stones or hot massage or an ultrasound machine trying to get the tissues to move and produce heat, and the brain does not tolerate that well at all. So folks need to be really particular. Right now, there's advertising on Amazon or other websites for red light panels, red light therapies, red light wraps that we can put on chronic arthritic knees. Those do not produce a safe or happy result on the brain some of the time or most of the time. So folks have to be really picky about lasers.
Okay, good to know.
That's my strong caution. I had one lady write me 9 emails in 12 hours about how much she hated me because I triggered a massive, massive migraine headache with only 2 minutes of laser on her brain. And she had a massive detox reaction for a 2-year-old concussion. And so imagine working on somebody and giving them a headache. And so she wrote me 9 emails in 12 hours about how much she hated my guts, and she refused to come see me for another 6 months, scared to death of me.
Oh, that's really sad.
Now, that doesn't mean that lasers are scary on the brain. It means that only some of the lasers are FDA cleared or approved for the brain. So there's one company that has 21 FDA clearances for using low-level or non-thermal, no heat. It's called the Class 2 laser. The company is Erchonia, ERCHONIA. They're the only ones that do the research that has FDA clearance for blood vessels, blood flow, inflammation, pain, circulation in the tissues. And their most specific laser that I love the most is the big one called the FX405. That is 2 wings on the side, 2 lasers on top of the head. It's very high tech, and it's a lot of fun, quickly calming down the brain and the nerves for somebody almost within minutes. And I know you've seen a little teeny tiny bit of that here in my clinic.
Yeah, I did get to see a little tiny bit of it. I'm curious, how long do these effects last? Like, is this something that hopefully people will get to a point where they don't need to be doing that regularly kind of thing?
Man, that's a really good question and a really hard one to answer. The hardest part of my job is I don't have a crystal ball to know how you would respond versus how I responded, my ongoing care or maintenance versus your needs or one of your children or one of your clients that relies on you. That's the hardest part to know. The research is ongoing for putting or using low-level laser on the brain. There's some very exciting research that's been conducted that hasn't been approved or released yet, but there's a whole bunch of data that the researchers have for helping the brain that hopefully someday we will be able to advertise and promote for many of the degenerative brain conditions. The research is conducted. The results are amazing. We're waiting for FDA clearance to be able to talk about what can be done to repair a degenerated brain. But it's not approved. So,
so we can't talk about it.
For brain fog, brain inflammation, circulation in the brain, and the most exciting piece is helping the body be more efficient at clearing toxins out of the tissues is the most exciting part about low-level laser on the brain. If we slam the head side to side enough, the brain sloshes side to side, and it's known that the neurons will stretch. And as they stretch, they leak. The fluid leakage becomes like it's toxins or toxic on the brain. Low-level laser is now, the latest research is showing the body is more efficient at detoxifying or clearing the congestion or inflammation out of the tissues. And that's the most exciting part, to watch somebody's brain fog start to change, sometimes within seconds or minutes. Sometimes it's within days. For some cases where I know they've had a documented concussion and I'm working on the neck and the freedom to move the blood supply through the neck to the brain or drainage out of the skull past the neck injuries, that they'll see within 2 to 3 to 4 weeks, or as many as 6 to 8 of these sessions, that they feel less stress, better brain clarity, less fog, less fatigue, more refreshing sleep. There's lots of different clinical signs that people's brains respond to that, but waiting for an FDA clearance that says we are fixing brains with low-level laser, we're close, but we're not there yet.
Got it.
So put a big asterisk about our conversation that says it's very exciting, very promising, and it has been a whole bunch of fun in trying to calm down the brain. Most specifically, I know I can help reset or reactivate cranial nerves with a very simple brainstem exam, and it takes about 5 seconds per nerve for most people to know that their brain likes the laser and will respond with a normal nerve function, like go cross-eyed and be muscle tested at the same time, and they can now multitask. It's fascinating.
That's so cool. Yes, I really enjoyed watching you work. So that is, fascinating and amazing, the things that can be done. That's so cool. Are there other things that you want people to know about, like tools that you've used, things that you found to be particularly helpful?
Great question. Let's hold that question for 1 second, because yes, starting tomorrow, I'll launch a brand new device here in the office that is unbelievably promising for the depression side, the anxiety side, the PTSD side of things for the brain, for those folks that have really put their head and neck through the ringer. Fascinating, and I'm sure you'll geek out on the latest cutting edge of a live reading of the electrical activity in the brain and a device that will adapt instantly to a live EEG on the brain. It's fascinating.
Okay. Are you going to tell us what it is?
I won't, but I will tell you what it is later on, and you can come over and test the device.
Cool. Very cool.
Because I don't want to embarrass myself talking about an amazing new device where clinical research was better than they ever anticipated. And so they launched the device quicker, sooner, faster than they thought they were going to be able to. Let me tell you about 2 fun people currently right now that I'm helping. Until 2 weeks ago, my oldest client is 87 years old. And almost 10 years ago, I met her for severe trigeminal neuralgia pain on the left side of her face. Severe pain underneath her left eye, so severe that she would not speak, and she could only take tomato soup puree and put that to her lips. She discontinued driving. She would not speak. She could barely eat, and tears leaking out of the left eye. She was in severe pain, brought in by her older sister to see if I could help calm down the nerve on the left side of her face. Back then, the procedure was very gently releasing the twist on the left side of her neck, underneath her earlobe, and the side of her face called the trigeminal nerve, or nerve number 5, the cranial nerve 5, and most specifically the middle branch of cranial nerve 5 on the left, calmed down for her in about 8 weeks. But it was slow and excruciating for her to travel to see me, and excruciating for her to lay down on my treatment table, and she was scared to death to let me touch the skin underneath her left ear, and I don't blame her at all. Well, it took about 8 weeks for her to begin to speak and drive herself and eat more than just tomato puree. And last week, her daughter called and said, "Mom has taken a fall and she put her head through the sheetrock in the wall. We need to make sure Mom's going to be okay," and scared me to death. So 87 years old, falling forward and putting the top of her head through the wall. She's very fortunate she didn't hit one of the studs. She was in between, and she put her head through the sheetrock in the wall. She passed every concussion test that I could throw at her. Even though she had a bleeding wound on top of her scalp, her brain was rock solid. And so I said to her, and I said, "This is the only time I can say this to you, but I'm really glad you're very hard-headed." And she laughed and thought I was very silly. Her neck was jolted forward, and I understand it was jolted forward. I very gently worked on her neck, and I've checked on her twice now in the last week to make sure that trigeminal nerve does not fire up again. And so far, knock on wooden table here, it looks really good. Good. So a little bit of whiplash in her neck, but a rock solid brain. And so we've been able to help her maintain her brain now for almost 10 years. And I told her she's not allowed to scare me or her 3 daughters to death anymore by trying head-to-head combat with the wall. Okay.
Good advice.
So sometimes not very old ladies at age 87 crash land just like our little boys crash land with sports. Okay. Well, the week before that, her daughter was parked at a red light, and a full-size pickup truck at 25 miles an hour on his phone didn't stop and did only $3,000 worth of damage to the back of her Toyota, but her brain took all of it. And so her left side ability to hear a snapping noise or lift her left shoulder or look out the corner of her eye or the feeling on her face is completely shut down, like she took a whiplash, startle, or concussion to the brain. So I'm lasering her daughter's brain for the left side while I stimulate or reactivate those nerves, plus chiropractic to the left side of her neck and where the seatbelt pulled on her left shoulder. But I haven't had to do any of that for her dear mother that put her head through the wall. So we never know whether a big or little insult to the brain or the neck or the spine will show up like whiplash or concussion or both. Anyway, those are two current success cases that are a lot of fun to help. What else can I answer for you? I wanted to sneak those two in with current fun cases that I enjoy. And these are people that I love to see. Can I test what's going on? Can I calm down the nervous system? And do they respond usually within a few minutes to show me that I've got help for them versus I would send them to occupational therapists like you, neurologists, or other experts like a functional MRI. If they don't show me the indicators that they respond to what I do, then I quickly fire myself and refer them out to see somebody else.
That's awesome. And I love that you pointed out the fact that you don't, the quote unquote degree of severity of the injury doesn't necessarily indicate how impactful it's going to be for with the head injury or not. So if there's going to be a concussion or not, or how bad the concussion symptoms are, is not necessarily related to how quote unquote bad the injury itself was. So it is so unique to every individual, and even within the same individual, the different experiences of injury can make it have a different response. So it is
absolutely.
It's just a case by case thing, and people got to figure it out. So I'm glad that you brought that up. I also wanted to ask you or point out something that you said way earlier. That I guess it was at the beginning of your story. You mentioned that this was your 9th doctor that you had seen, and I just want to throw out there that I think it's so great that you didn't give up on looking for help. I just think that's so key, and a message that I want people to hear loud and clear, because that's it can be easy. I had a patient once say that he and his wife had decided to put a pause on hope, that they were like, we can't do this right now. I can't go to another one. I can't do this. I can't. And it was just heartbreaking to me to hear that, and totally understandable. But I just, if that's where you're at, I guess that's okay too. Like, it's okay to take a pause if you need to, but also don't give up entirely, because there are things that may help that you may not have found yet. So I appreciate that you are a good example of that.
Absolutely.
And that not only did you find that with that 9th doctor, but then you continued to find other things, and more things have been helpful for you. It's really good.
Well, the one blessing from the different injuries that I have had may be a little bit of ADD, where I constantly am searching for what more do I not know, what is next for me or the people that I worry about, and looking to see, can I quickly determine someone responds to some of the tools and treatments and protocols I have. Very rarely is it a matter of, well, let's try this for 30 or 60 or 90 days and see if they're finally starting to progress at all. That's not the case with the kind of clientele I get to hang around with. I tell folks I've got 2 rules. If they can't be nice and they want to make me cry, then I probably can't take their case. And the other is I only take care of good responders or fast responders with what I do. If I don't see an indicator immediately that their body or their nervous system will respond to my testing or my protocols, I'll refer them to somebody else that I trust or someone that I rely on to keep me in the game for the fun things that I like to do when I'm not here helping people.
Yeah, I love that. I think that makes a lot of sense, and I imagine your patients appreciate that.
Absolutely.
People want to see the results. So what advice do you have for people who are loving and supporting someone who's dealing with an injury like this? I always want to hear people's response to that, because it varies, and I would love to hear what you have to say.
Well, the hardest part is to ask them, don't give up on their loved ones. Mm-hmm. That would just rocks my world. That's the hardest part. The people that have been concussed, their brains aren't right. They don't think right. They don't sleep right. They don't eat right. They don't handle stress well. They don't remember well. And so try not to give up on them, no matter how ornery or irritable or difficult they can be. Mm-hmm. Looking for hope, looking for help. That's the most important part. There's a lot more that goes into this than just, are people in pain or not? Again, can they eat? Can they digest? Can they sleep? Can they remember? Can they handle fatigue? Can they handle heat? Can they handle stress? There's so many indicators that show that the nerves are still screaming. Of the 7 different kind of nerve pathways or nerve types we have, only one of those is pain. But, heat or cold or pressure or touch or vibration, there's so many other facets of our nervous system. So the caregiver's job is almost every bit as hard as the patient to try and do the work or give their body time and give their body the rest that it needs. The bigger part is how do we clean out the system? How do we get the inflammation or the toxins off of the nerves, out of the system? And for some, it can be fast. For some, it can take time. For some, it can be permanent change to those tissues and how they handle stress and how they function. I know you've seen all different levels of function before, after injuries, or function recovery with treatment and therapies and time and everything that goes into this. It's complex for everybody and nobody's the same.
Yeah. And I think that is helpful and important to remember, whether you're the patient or the caregiver, that it's a process. You brought up before that you have a lot of sleep tricks to help you, and I would love. we're gonna get to hop off here pretty soon. But if you have any tricks for people that you think would be helpful for them, because sleep is a concern for a lot of people. Love to hear your ideas.
One of the tricks I used back when I was at CFX was I used very, very low carbohydrate, very high fat, very high protein, almost a ketogenic type eating protocol, where when I was there for that week, I fasted all day long and I had one meal a day. I had dinner and that was it. And that freaked out Dr. Fong and her team of, we're going to work you hard. You're going to burn 2,000 to 3,000 calories a day. I'm a big guy. And I fasted all day long. I stayed very hydrated. I had about 60 calories for breakfast or lunch, and then I had a decent meal for dinner, and then I slept. And I took care of myself all week. I didn't have a caregiver with me. I did stay at a hotel there, but I fasted all day long. And so I've studied brain food, brain protection, or the process called ketosis or ketone therapy for the brain. So for some people, if they have high carbs or high carbohydrate anywhere during their day, they may not sleep well at all. And that may be very stimulating to their system. So brain food or calorie restriction may be needed for some people. That's a very advanced conversation on brain food or brain protection. And it comes from Navy SEALs eating a specific way so they can handle low oxygen deep sea diving. Anyway, for some people, they shouldn't eat anything after about 6 p.m. in the evening so that digestion is done, so their brain can repair and their gut can feed their brain while they're sleeping, instead of their digestion trying to work and digest instead of repair and recover. So calories and when they get them, finding out if people eat bread, eat pasta, eat carbohydrates, eat sugar, and it makes them fall asleep, well, that's not brain food for them. So for many of the nerve cases, I put them on a high quality brain food or nerve food that comes from an omega-3 fatty acid. Again, that's an advanced conversation, but most of those folks have inflamed or injured nerves and they need nerve food or brain food. For others, caffeine or sugar and the other stimulants or the uppers that they rely on to try and function when they're so exhausted. And so working people out of sugar, out of soda, out of high caffeine or the crazy energy drinks that are so terrible for the system. Yeah. But I understand when people are non-functional without that, and they wouldn't get out of bed ever, and they would never get anything done. So working people through that process and getting them back to feeding the system rather than just survival calories and survival stimulants. Most specific to me, it's high doses of magnesium in the evening, and magnesium to protect the nerves. And so very specific magnesium that's a nerve protector or nerve inflammation, or a magnesium that calms down the heart, relaxes the breathing, calms down the nerves and the brain to help people not startle awake, or the painful, uncomfortable, arthritic cases or the injury whiplash people, there's a version of magnesium that has an acid and an amino acid that's attached to that. So they're not so tender and sore, like the fibromyalgia can't touch me people, the chronic fatigue, chronic pain people, a product called magnesium malate that comes from malic acid. It's the acid from a very tart green apple. It's the very tart acid from rhubarb. High doses of malic acid with a little bit of magnesium can help the people that are in pain and toss and turn try and rest a little deeper or a little longer before they startle awake and toss and turn again.
Okay. So where my brain is going with this is that's fascinating. I I want to have some people that I know try that. But is there when you say high dosage, that just is there a limit there? Do you want to clarify that for people? Is there some kind of dangerous overdose kind of thing that they should be aware of?
Well, thankfully I don't know what a dangerous overdose would look like, but I'm a big guy and I'm built like a linebacker and I'm 6 feet tall. And so the normal human dose of magnesium is 360 to 400 milligrams per day. Mm-hmm. That's but there's all sizes and shapes, like the 96-year-old, 80 pounds soaking wet kind of little old lady where they've got all their bone density but no muscle tone anymore. So it's really hard through the internet to say, here's the daily dose you should take.
Yeah.
So finding a nutritionist, finding a nutrition store that's a quality nutrition store, because lots of magnesiums that are sold are poor quality or they upset the stomach severely. And a good quality magnesium should have no effect on digestion at all, like constipation, irritable bowel, colitis. So good quality magnesium that's absorbable, that's connected to malic acid, it's called magnesium malate, should have no insult or impact on digestion at all, and should be wonderful for painful tissues to the touch, painful inflamed nerves, or a very rapid racing kind of brain. It should calm the brain down as like the antidote to caffeine and sugar and a stimulant.
Okay. Good to know. Thank you. I appreciate the caveat there. That's helpful. Super, super interesting. All right. Well, thank you so much for this conversation. I've learned so much and am excited to get this out there for people. Is there anything else before we go that you want people to know about concussions or your experience or anything on that side? And then also after that, I want you to tell people how they can get a hold of you and hear more from you. So
great question. For those that are struggling with their brain or their brain recovering, if gently pulling the head back or tucking the head forward is tighter one way than the other, or looking towards one shoulder is restricted compared to the other. Now, the side-to-side rotation or the forward-backward, if one is restricted, and I'm talking very gentle because I don't do anything mean or intense in my clinic at all, if that feels restricted on one side or protective or guarded or blocked one way or the other, and I don't do the ear towards shoulder test for people, that's a whole different conversation. But side to side or forward and backward, they likely can do better than they already are with some sort of treatment, physical therapy, occupational therapy, neuromuscular therapy, upper cervical chiropractic care. They're welcome to come and see me or find somebody in their area. The hardest part is find somebody who they trust, find somebody whose bedside manner matches their needs or their ability to describe what their concerns are. Not everybody's a wonderful fit for my charming personality. I totally get that. So again, we have 2 rules. I only take care of good responders and I only take care of those that are nice. And I get it. It's very hard for me to be nice when my brain is screaming and my head is leaning left. I totally get it. So
So how can people get a hold of you if they want to work with you or learn more about what you do? Great
question. The hard part is I don't have the ability to help people through the internet. So Ms. Bethany, with your amazing technology skills, if you can help me figure out how to help people through the internet, then we can double our impact on the world. Okay. So I'm a hands-on guy. I'm a face-to-face practitioner. Folks are welcome to come see me. My consultation is complimentary until I see a symptom or a sign or a test that shows they should be a responder to me, my consultation is complimentary. People can come see me here in Farmington, Utah. I've got a couple of different websites, or I've got an Instagram page or a Facebook page where people can track me down. And I apologize for the internet commentary about fast cars and fast skis and lots of fun. And I'll try and focus on helping people and happy brains instead. I've got a website that's utahchiro.com. That's Utah all spelled out, UTAHCHIRO.com, utahchiro.com. Or DC Spinal Care, all one word, like Dr. Crowley Spinal Care or Davis County Spinal Care. It's dcspinalcare.com. Okay. Or there's another one that's been fun called weakankles.com, and that's weak-ankles with an S on the end.com. It's pretty interesting that most people that have had a head injury, when they stand on one foot, they're not in balance, or they have a tendency to take a fall or sprain an ankle. And so I will test feet and ankles and balance on both feet, or balance on one foot, or balance when the eyes are closed. And that's almost a giveaway that the brain is not ready to go back to full speed. So weak-ankles.com is another way.
Perfect. All right. And we'll put all of this in the show notes so people can find that easily. So, great. Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate your time and sharing your expertise and knowledge with us today.
My pleasure. Thank you so much for the chance to help more people.
I'm so glad you listened in today. I hope you have gained some helpful insights and inspiration regarding dealing with and recovering from concussions. My goal is to create more awareness and education about concussions and the fact that there is so much that can be done to improve life after someone has had one. Help me spread the message by liking, commenting, rating, and subscribing to this podcast, and share it with others who would benefit from hearing it. There are more resources available on my website. And again, if you or someone you love would benefit from concussion coaching, sign up for a free consultation using the link in the show notes or at my website, www.theconcussioncoach.com. Thank you. See you next time, and take good care of that amazing brain of yours.